Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, as you can probably tell by the darker than usual intro, we're going to be talking about weapon lights, specifically some sub 200 lumen weapon lights, and if there really is a practical purpose to lower power lights. Now, first up, let's go ahead and talk about this one that's on my AR-15 pistol. This is a BCA upper that I've been building out for a little while. As you can see, we have a different optic on there that I'm testing out right now. There'll be a video on that later. But specifically, the light that I have on this guy right now, this is a Vism light. So of course, you know, Vism is, they look cool and that's kind of what they're designed to do, but they're really cheap and they're not really all that good most of the time. But this guy here is a 200 lumen, even though most people say it's closer to 150 lumens. So that's why it's in this video. 150 lumen weapon light. This is a Keymod mount. It's all in one, so it's kind of a nice package and it's a good idea, but specifically we're going to be talking about the light and how bright it is. So now, if you're like me and most people and you're just building out a budget AR, you're going to also be looking at budget lights, because you're probably not going to be dropping $200-300 on a Surefire, or half a grand or a grand on a PEC 15 or something like that. So you're going to be looking at a few more budget options in the sub $100 range, or even in the sub $50 range if you can get away with it. So this guy here comes in perfectly at that range. This guy here is $25 or $27 online if you can find them. Now, they only come in Keymod, and they don't have any sort of Picatinny attachments or anything like that. So if you don't have a Keymod rail, you cannot mount this guy to your weapon. So now, both of the lights that are on both the rifles that we're going to talk about today, they both use CR123 batteries, which are fairly cheap and kind of the norm, which is really nice. You can find them for around $2 a piece, or if you're buying them in bulk, you can get them at $1 or under each, which is a really good buy. And this guy here is actually the second battery that I've had to put in this guy. Probably about 20 to 30 hours of use in total over the couple months that I've had it on here. You know, just over time, turning it on, playing around with it. Probably about 20 to 30 hours, which isn't terrible for a 200 lumen light, and it's a lot better than a lot of other ones that you're going to get that are a lot higher lumens. So now, of course, as most of you probably know, the most important thing when it comes to lights is not actually their lumens, but it's the combination of their lumens versus their throw. And their throw is essentially how wide that center beam is, or how bright or how wide of an area that covers. So this guy here actually has a fairly decent throw on it, and it works really well for its use case that I have it in right now, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But this 150 lumen light has a fairly wide throw, so it'll illuminate a larger area. Now, so somewhere where that definitely comes into a huge disadvantage is outside or at longer range. So as you'll see in the video, it's a little bit hard to get on camera, you know, just because it's cameras have a little bit harder time absorbing all of that light, different than our eyes do. So I could make out the targets just fine. The farthest target that I had out there was about 100-150 feet. So not super far away, but again, that is probably 2 to 3 times farther than you're ever going to need to take a shot with a gun like this in a defensive scenario. So one of the nice things about having a larger throw with a weapon light like this is, even though it's not going to have that penetrating power to make out targets at longer range, what it is going to be better at is illuminating things at closer range. So what that means is essentially that if you're indoors, or if you're in an enclosed space where distance is not really going to be an issue, you're going to have a wider throw. It's going to illuminate more and show you a little bit more, so hopefully you're able to see what you need to see, whereas a very penetrating light, a very small throw, but it's very, very bright, isn't going to do as good of a job in close range, because you're going to have to be moving around quite a bit more, and it's not going to give you a wider field of view like a larger throw will. So now let's go ahead and talk about this guy. This guy here is my other rifle. This guy here is, of course, the 16-inch upper version, and this guy here has a game face 150 watt light on it. This guy here is a little bit nicer, has a much larger pressure pad that I have mounted up here. And now this guy here, they're both the same lumens. They're both 150 lumens. This guy here, I believe it was originally like $50, and I got it like 60% off, so I paid like 20 bucks for it. So these are around the same price that I paid for both these guys. 150 lumens, same amount of lumens. And the thing that you'll notice about this guy, and you might even be able to see it on the camera a little bit, is that this guy here has a much tighter throw, meaning that it has a much more precise light, and it's going to be able to penetrate the darkness a little bit better and a little bit longer, even though it's the same lumens as the other guy. So that's really nice when I was shooting at that 50-yard target, and I can make it out really clearly and kind of make I could point the gun where I wanted to shoot it as opposed to just where I could see it. And so if you need to see something at a little bit further away, if this is a hiking gun or for whatever other purpose you're putting on a weapon light or just to look cool. So even though both these lights that we compare are the same amount of lumens, this guy here is going to be much better outdoors and at longer distance versus the other guy. So even though both these lights that we've looked at have the same amount of lumens, this guy here is going to be much better outside or at longer ranges because it's going to have that extra or that tighter throw that's going to allow it to penetrate farther, and so you'll be able to see a little bit further away. Now, it also makes sense with the way that I have these rifles set up. This guy here is a 16-inch. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, so it makes sense that you'd want to use it at a little bit longer range. So you want something that has a tighter throw or a farther distance that you can see. On my 10.5-inch, this guy here, you have a 150 watt light, which looks really cool in the setup, and plus it's a Keymod rail, so it obviously has to go on this one. But other than that, it's a 10.5-inch pistol, so you're going to be using it, or essentially the philosophy of use for the pistol is going to be closer range, so you want a larger throw to illuminate more at close range. Is 150 lumens really enough for your system? And now that does actually depend a little bit. So this guy here is a 10.5-inch upper. It's not designed for long range. Even in the daylight, I use this guy about 200 yards and in. I've stretched it out to 300, and you can certainly stretch it out farther, but that's really not in this guy's philosophy of use, although of course you can use it for that. But this 150 watt light is enough in close range and indoor use. It's actually perfect for, just close quarters and that sort of thing. It's going to illuminate a lot, and it's going to be bright enough indoors, but it's not going to be good outside or in any sort of long range engagement because having that wider throw does not allow that light to penetrate. So if you're using a 150 watt light for indoors and it has a wide enough throw to where it's comfortable and you can see enough of your surroundings and you have a wide field of view, I'd say that's probably okay. Now, I'm not a professional. I'm not using any of this stuff for duty use or anything like that. It's essentially to look cool or for, home defense or that sort of thing if you ever need it. So I do think that 150 lumens can get you by indoors, but it's not going to be preferable or optimal. But again, if you're looking for just a budget setup, something that will work for you in a pinch, 150 lumens is kind of the bare minimum, I would say. It's kind of scraping the bottom there. And again, that's with a larger throw. So you do want something that has a little bit more illumination, a little bit larger field of view. That way there it's better in close quarters. However, the other guy that we have, this guy here, and so now with this guy here, even though they are both 150 lumen lights and they put out the same total amount of light, but they don't just put it in the same direction. So if you're somebody who needs to have illumination at longer ranges at even 75, 100 yards, or even 50 yards was really scraping it by with this guy. So if you're somebody who likes to go on hikes at night or it's just dark in your area and you need to, for whatever reason, have a little bit more illumination, 150 lumens at anything more than close range indoor type stuff is not going to be enough. And so now, of course, if you're somebody who's looking for a more serious light setup, you're probably looking in the range of 300 to 800 lumens as opposed to 150, something that's going to have a much wider use case scenario as well, because you can have something that has a much wider throw, but because of its total lumen output, it can also penetrate farther. And so now, of course, you can get a much brighter light, something with 300, 400 or more lumens that's going to have a wider throw than this guy and penetrate farther. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, and having a brighter light is never a bad idea, but again, you're going to transfer some of that extra energy into shorter battery life. So it is something to keep in mind. And again, these lights, if you're looking at 150 lumens, it's pretty much relegated to indoor or close range use. I really wouldn't get anything with a super tight throw that's going to penetrate really far, but you're not going to be able to see anything around, and it can be very, very difficult to find what you're trying to shoot at. So pretty much 150 lumens is the bare minimum, I would say, for indoor use if it has a wide enough throw and a not too wide of a throw so it's still bright enough and you can still see 10-15 feet in front of you. So that's pretty much it for the video. Once again, this is pretty much for people who are budget oriented and building out their ARs and they're looking into different light setup. You can definitely find better lights that are in the 250 to 300 lumen range for still under $100 for even $50 to $75, and they're going to do a lot more for you. So I would recommend getting brighter than 150, but again, if you have it in your use case scenario or you're just on a super tight budget and you just want a weapon light that looks cool, then you can go for it. But I would recommend 200 to 300 as a bare minimum, though 150 can get you by in the right circumstance. So that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please let me know what you guys think down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace off.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. What are you still doing here? The video's over. Wait. Why are you still here? Like, share, and subscribe. Or don't. The choice is yours. But if you do subscribe, thanks. And I like pizza. Peace off.